The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is Rob Rosenthal, your host, and this is podcast number 21 of what we call All You Can Eat. Welcome to the show. Today is the 25th day of July, 2018. Middle of the summer, warm, lovely. Anyway, tonight on the podcast, as always, we talk about deliciousness. I want to mention a couple of things that we can look forward to this evening. I just a quick mention of a food critic, Jonathan Gold. He passed away this week. I want to talk about him a little bit. Then maybe capture some of the other news events that have been showing up. There's a great piece in today's New York Times. Wednesday is exactly the right day to have a podcast about food, because Wednesday is the day, at least locally where I am, coming to you from New York City, that both the New York Times and some of the other local papers, what's left of them anyway, write about food. Terrific article in the New York Times today about Australian breakfast served in New York. We talk a little bit about that. Recipes. I saw some different recipes for like chicken with vinegar. That showed up also today, and it makes me really want to not only eat it and kind of cook it, but discuss it a little bit, because there's something to know about chicken, and there's something to know about vinegar, and again, that's going to be super delicious. What else is on the schedule today? Got a little something here about, this says right here, and also today, New York Times, when we eat or don't eat may be critical for health, right? So, I think everybody knows how important what we eat is, but today's article is interesting. It has to do with your body's circadian rhythms, how your body functions over the 24 hours of each and every day, and how what you eat when may make a significant difference in your health and well-being. That's just inherently interesting to me. So let's cover some of that. Hey, here's the thing to know, incidentally. I am available and open should you feel like calling in. The number here is 800-508-5431. So what you want to remember is 800-508-5431. And you want to call in and talk about food, talk about today's deliciousness, any questions that you may have about eating, cooking, dining, feel free to call in. I am here for you. In the meantime, I have, because it's 8 p.m. or so on the East Coast here of the United States of America in July, and I have prepared myself for this evening's podcast with a cocktail. This cocktail uses bourbon. And it's funny for me because I got to say, I spent, most of my life not drinking bourbon. I had no problem with the, with the vodka. I like tequila. If you've listened in before, you know I'm a fan of mesquite. I'll drink rum, although not often. I like it. I'm a huge fan of gin. If I'm going to have a martini, it's going to be, well, actually a martini is made with gin. But anyway, I love the gin, especially in the summer, by the way. nice gin and tonic with a big fat squeeze of lime. Nothing wrong with that. So all of those are fine, and yet I was not a drinker of the what you would call your brown spirits, which is to say Scotch and rye and bourbon, and all of that I suspect is related to that moment that some of us have had when you have too much of something and you get all ill. Now, for me, it was like it was some summer session, college, and went out and we were drinking, my girlfriend and I at the time, Rusty Nails. That's what that cocktail was. I must have been 20. Rusty Nail was made with Scotch and Drambuie, which is a sweet Scotch-based liqueur. Don't know how many I had, but it was enough to essentially wake up somewhere on the toilet. And so for the following, let's call it 30, 35 years, I didn't actually drink the brown stuff. Don't really particularly enjoy Scotch. Would not drink rye. It made no sense to me. Did not drink bourbon. And then, in my role as a writer of culinary tourism and food, I was invited to go on what they call the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. What a great trip it was. What a great trip it was. But it kind of assumed, since I was there to write about bourbon, that I was going to be drinking bourbon, and I did. And from the second that I got there to the time that they took us to whatever the first kind of bourbon, distillery was that we went to, I had a really super positive reaction. I mean, it's the thing about bourbon is that it's I don't know. It's aged, I guess, in the oftentimes barrels, French oak. It has hints of kind of like vanilla. I don't know. All I could tell you is that I liked it, and ever since then, and I'm only going back, 5-6 years. I'm happy to drink bourbon. So anyway, that's in the cocktail tonight. I think the best way for me ever was, I had done a video, what's her name, Elizabeth Carmel, Karmel. We should have her on at some point. She's kind of like almost like, in some ways, they call her like the queen of barbecue. Comes from the Carolinas, in the barbecue business. We cooked together, we did a video together, and we were going to do some pulled pork. And she brought the ingredients, and I said, what are we going to have to drink? She literally said to me, we're going to drink brown water. I had never heard of that before. It sounds wrong. It just sounds kind of repulsive. She said, we're going to drink brown water. I said, what's that? She said, it's bourbon. Oh, okay. Do we have it, like I said, do we have it like straight up? By that point, I had already appreciated it. Have it straight up? Do we have it like with a mixer? She said, yeah. Said, we're going to have it with a spicy hot ginger ale. Oh, I should really remember the name, because I'm telling you, man. What was the name of that? Oh, if I have time, I will find it. It was a ginger ale that's really only available locally down there, like in the Carolinas. But I was able to kind of Amazon it. There may be one place or two in New York where you could grab a bottle or two of the stuff. Really, just unbelievably delicious. You could get it either in regular ginger ale or like hot, because ginger is hot, And we were cooking on camera for probably a half an hour to get a 10-minute video, and trust me when I tell you, by the end of it, we were loopy, because this combination of bourbon with this spicy ginger ale struck me as being kind of like liquid acid. It was like LSD. It went down just so easily and smooth and so delicious. It was like, if you're not from New York, you may not know what an egg cream is. It has neither egg nor cream in it. It's basically chocolate, soda, milk. Anyway, this drink that we made of the bourbon with this spicy ginger ale was kind of like an adult egg cream. It had like elements of vanilla, and it was easy and good and delicious. Anyway, that's a long way around that doing right now. Let me just have a sip right here of the bourbon. Here on July 25th, which it turns out, and I only know this really by coincidence, I don't look these kind of things up, but July 25th is Culinarian's Day. Culinarian's Day, it says, is a special day for anyone who cooks. Well, that's no one. We've discussed that before. People don't cook anymore because it's too easy to order it, go out for it. We'll change that. That's my job. My job is to encourage you to hop into the kitchen every once in a while and make something fabulous. Easy, delicious, good, satisfying, fun, creative. Nobody wants to do that anymore. And yet, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to encourage you to do it. And if you know me, you know that my formula is most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort. I'm going to come back to chicken thighs later in the program because chicken thighs were invented for the kind of cooking I do. Most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort. In other words, you really only need chicken thighs and maybe salt, or maybe a seasoning, or maybe something like that. 2 ingredients. Culinarian's Day, a special day for anyone who cooks. That means just about every one of us get to celebrate this day. You don't have to be a chef or a graduate of Culinary Institute to celebrate this delicious day. You simply have to cook and enjoy the results. Okay, so this is a day, completely made-up day, but true. I mean, if you look it up, July 25th, Culinarian's Day, you'll find it there. And that appeals to me because I think of myself as a culinarian. In fact, I will recite for you for the following 140 seconds a little kind of rap poem thing that I did, including that I'm a culinarian. It's called I'm a Modern Food Man. I'm all natural, organic, and vitamin enhanced. I'm antioxidant, but probiotic and lactose intolerant. I'm hormone free, but I like food porn. I'm a USDA choice first cold pressed extra virgin ovo-lacto vegetarian. I'm on the Weight Watchers South Beach Paleo diet, so I'm good fat, not trans fat. So I say yes to fatty acids and no to fatty foods. I'm up on salmon, but down on salmonella. All over the place now. I'm all for pink grapefruit, but against pink slime. I eat whole grain and whole wheat, and you know that I get those at Whole Foods. I've done a juice cleanse and a colon cleanse, true, but all I had was a slow food movement. I'm low calorie and low cholesterol, but high in fiber and high on life because I'm gluten-free, omega-3 infused green tea. I'm calcium-rich, nutrient-dense, and non-genetically modified. I'm health-conscious, herb-encrusted, and unsweetened, but I've got sticky buns. There's more. I eat winter vegetables with summer squash and spring onions in the fall. My chicken is free range, my music is free bird, and this bird you'll never change because I'm a gourmet, gourmand, Epicurean, culinarian on Culinarian Day. I'll eat ethnic food that's ethically raised, so it's farm fresh, wild caught, and sustainable. I'm a regular guy, but I eat super foods like acai, blueberries, wheatgrass, and kale. My tomatoes are heirloom, even my pork has a heritage. I drink pure natural mountain spring water. If it's triple filtered and ozonated, I'm no food geek, but my yogurt is Greek. I'm polyunsaturated, savory yet sweet, and if you're obese, I'm the food police. I feed a cold, I stuff a fever, I like nothing more than a slice of pizza. Enough about me, here's the deal. Life is short, my friends, so never waste a meal. A little bit about me. Jonathan Gold, the food critic, probably for close to 40 years, predominantly out in Los Angeles. So well known and highly regarded. I think he's the only food critic ever to have won a Pulitzer Prize for his writing. And so highly regarded that there's even a documentary about him. It's called City of Gold, which is worth seeing. He died this week, age 57 or 58, way too young. Wife, kids, the whole deal. Pancreatic cancer. I'll read you, though, this is from the obituary written in the New York Times. It says, in more than 1,000 reviews published since the 1980s, Mr. Gold chronicled his city's pupuserias, bistros, diners, nomadic taco trucks, cook-caked outdoor rib and brisket smokers, sweaty indoor xiaolong bao steamers, postmodern pizzerias, vintage delicatessens, strictly omakase sushi-yas, Roman gelaterias, Korean porridge parlors, Lanzhou hand-pulled noodle vendors, Iranian tongue sandwich shops, vegan hot dog griddles, cloistered French-leaning hyper-seasonal tasting counters, and wood-paneled Hollywood grills with chicken pot pie and martinis on every other table. I don't know about you. That's my dream job right there. A lot of the people in the food world, he was like the food critic, Jonathan Gold. Someone said, I think it was Ruth Reichel, who used to be the editor of Gourmet magazine. Unlike some critics, she said, Mr. Gold never saw expensive, rarefied restaurants as the peak of the terrain he surveyed, although he reviewed his share of them. Peaky Beverly Hills, Noma, and A-Linea all took turns under his critical loop. He was in his element, though, when he championed small, family-run establishments where publicists and wine lists were unheard of, and English was often a second language that was spoken at all. Before Tony Bourdain, before reality TV and Parts Unknown and people really being into ethnic food in a serious way, it was Jonathan who got it completely, Michael said. He really got that food was a gateway into the people, that food could really define a community. He was really writing about the people more than the food. Jonathan Gold. Jonathan Gold. He passed away this week. I mentioned this article in today's Times about Australia, basically referring to the cadre of Australian chefs that have made their way to New York to open up restaurants here, particularly specializing in breakfast. And I guess one of the things that stood out, aside from some serious pictures of food, in fact, there's a lovely shot on Instagram from a very foodie professional photographer, Melanie Dunia, who writes, it's a picture that I'm looking at right now that just like, even if you've just eaten, looks so delicious. She said, Bill's Australia is one of my first stops when I get off the plane in Sydney at 6 a.m. and crave a great cup of coffee and a full Aussie. Right? So what's a full Aussie? Pictured here, scrambled eggs. And their scrambled eggs are not like ours. Like they look like creamier and like souffle-like. Anyway, along with the scrambled eggs that I'm looking at is sourdough toast, cumin roast tomato, a slab of divine butter, miso mushrooms, and pork chili and fennel sausages. I mean, you can't pick like one, I suppose you could pick one meal as your favorite. There's something about breakfast, like, I'm just looking at that, I could have that now and be excited. I love breakfast. I'm not saying it's my favorite, I'm not saying it isn't. Eggs, man. I do my eggs, like I'm an oval light guy or a sunny side up because I want that yellow goo running all over the place. I literally, I make eggs all the time, and the first thing that I do is I take my piece of bread, whatever it may be, and I break that yolk. I'm one of those. I want that yolk on my toast. There should be a place where you can go and it's just you and toast and yolk. Hash browns, home fries, sure. Hot cup of coffee? Sounds good to me. These, pork chili and fennel sausages, that does not look bad. Anyway, so here's an entire article about Australians coming to New York and serving up breakfast, because they're big on that kind of wussy breakfast that I just described to you. If there's one line in the article that stood out for me, it is this one, quote, "Breakfast in Australia can last until it's time for a beer if you work it right." Paula Palmer, graphic designer from Canberra who lives in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Breakfast in Australia can last until it's time for a beer if you work it right. That's why you gotta love the Australians, man. They were never really known for the food. This is more of a recent thing. They used to have English food when that wasn't good. Now it's certainly good in England. Look at like the top 50 restaurants in the world right now. There's a bunch of them that are coming from England. Australia, not yet, but on the way. Anyway, they made two. There were two in particular recipes that were interesting that were coming from these local Australian restaurants. One is a breakfast salad. Sounds weird, right? And the other is avocado toast. Let's talk about the breakfast salad, shall we? Breakfast salad. From the same trend that brought us avocado toast, the breakfast served in Australian cafes often include bright vegetables arranged in eye-catching ways. Salad is definitely not part of the traditional American breakfast menu, but on a Sunday morning, the combination of chilled, crunchy greens, protein-rich cheese and eggs, and an eye-opening dressing is hugely appealing. This one was created at Carthage Must Be Destroyed, an airy and slightly eccentric Australian-style cafe, hidden behind an unmarked entrance in Brooklyn. Chef Inonda Amanda likes to leave the lettuce leaves whole to make it easier to eat with your fingers. You can prepare the vegetables the day before. Skip marinating the feta if you must. This would make a lovely lunch. Okay, so here's what we go. This is a salad that has greens in it, and avocado and feta cheese and romaine and sprouts, and it doesn't have to be that hard to put together, because you could just go with the crumbled feta. However, the recommendation is to marinate the feta with a garlic clove, a whole bunch of peppercorns, and some extra virgin olive oil. So it's not hard, right? I mean, like, seriously, you take some decent feta cheese, throw in some, a clove of garlic, a dozen or so, black or mixed peppercorns, some extra virgin olive oil, and you have yourself marinated feta. Salad itself is composed of 2 large hearts of romaine lettuce. I'm assuming that's now safe, even though a little, what's that problem that you have? Oh yeah, didn't I mention it before? Salmonella? Yeah. Anyway, you're going to need romaine hearts, a couple of halved lemons, a whole avocado, 2 ounces of sprouts. They can be alfalfa, clover, rainbow, 2 mini or Kirby cucumbers cut into spears, 2 or 3 hard-boiled eggs room temperature, peeled and halved, and then you just need your flaky salt, your coarse ground pepper, extra virgin olive oil, and a couple of handfuls of soft herbs. Could be basil, chives, cilantro, mint. Definitely going to want, even though they say it's optional, some sourdough toast. Wash and crisp the lettuce, fill a deep bowl, hold the lettuce hard, dip it, wash it, repeat it, cut off the ends, gently unfurl each romaine heart onto a large plate. Fluff and separate the leaves, but try to keep the natural formation intact. Squeeze half a lemon over each lettuce heart. Use a spoon to scoop chunks of avocado on top. Place tufts of sprouts among the romaine leaves. Place cucumber pieces and egg halves near the base of the lettuce. And then 6 chunks of that cheese that you had marinated there, that feta cheese. Liberally sprinkle the plate with flaky salt and black pepper, then splash on plenty of olive oil, making sure to hit the egg, cheese, and avocado. You can also use that oil that you used to marinate the feta, by the way. Tuck the herb leaves in among the lettuce leaves. Maybe you like chives, basil, cilantro, mint. They're all fine. Use them all, or some of them. Place the remaining lemon halves near the egg halves, and then serve with warm toast. Squeeze lemon over the salad and eat it with a knife and fork or with your hands. I don't think, it's weird because, there are so many things that you can, I don't believe in the traditional breakfast. I don't mind having breakfast for dinner. I kind of don't mind having certain elements of dinner for breakfast. You all know how cold pizza is the day after. Anyway, I truthfully never really thought of having a salad for breakfast, but this salad, crunchy, romaine, lemony, with these marinated bits of feta cheese, creamy avocado, and a couple of eggs that you've cooked to, basically hard boil. I don't know, that's just great to me with some nice toasty sourdough toast. Love that. Australian breakfast salad. What else? Then is the recipe for avocado toast. Avocado toast to me, I guess the only reason I'm hesitating and I'm not ambivalent. I love avocado toast. I've been making it for a long time. I made it for my kids for breakfast. So when I wrote a book about all the food that I cooked for my kids, one of my obvious recipes was avocado toast. I mention it because the book got a ton of good reviews. There was one, though, that stood out as being not good, and it was because someone found the recipes too easy, making reference to avocado toast. And that's fine. But even my avocado toast, when I made it, I said, it's not, anybody can take a ripe avocado. That's the hard part, is getting yourself a ripe avocado. Put it on a lovely piece of toast. I'm not saying that is the recipe. I made a point of saying, it's great with red pepper flakes. You can put little pieces of pistachio. I used to drop on it a piece of prosciutto for my kids. Sure, an egg on that is great. As is crumbly kind of, feta or goat or something like that. Anyway, here's the avocado toast recipe from this article about Australian breakfast in New York City. 2 large slices of crusty, chewy sourdough bread, preferably whole wheat. 1 ripe avocado, half pit removed. And again, the thing about the avocado is, you got to get a good one. And so the move is always to bring home more than one. And they're not going to be too hard and they're not going to be too soft. They're going to yield a little bit, your avocado, when you push them at the tip. They're going to feel, there's a little bit of yield in there. You may bring home more than one in case you open up a dog. I get mine at the Costco, as you know, because I'm the Costco ho. They sell them 6 at a time. They're hard as rocks. You leave them out. Then 2.5 days later, you have exactly 6 perfectly ripe avocados because they all ripen at the same time, and then you go into avocado frenzy. It means you have avocado toast for breakfast, you put avocado in your Australian salad, then you make guacamole. Avocado toast, Julia Moskin, writing in today's New York Times, 2 large slices, crusty, chewy sourdough bread, preferably whole wheat, 1 ripe avocado, extra virgin olive oil, flaky salt, and coarsely ground black pepper, half a lemon or lime. Optional garnishing. Here's where the fun comes in, people, because that avocado toast with a good avocado is all you really need, right? But it's with the options. Poached or fried eggs. Yes. Sunny side up or over easy, so that yolk breaks and oozes. Here's another option for you. Thinly sliced pickled or fresh red chilies such as Fresno or cherry. Yeah, if you like those, pickled jalapeno slices, put those on. That can't be bad. Here's an option. Thinly sliced pickled red onions. Here's an option. Pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds or sesame seeds, or in my case, little pieces of pistachio and red pepper flakes. And of course, herbs. Basil, cilantro, great. Mint, baby arugula. toast your bread, drizzle it with some olive oil, smear on your avocado, hit it with some salt and pepper if you want, and then drop on a whole bunch of garnishes. Ladies and gentlemen, avocado toast, which didn't exist when I was growing up, I promise, nobody ate it, is now available everywhere. And it's good, assuming that you have good avocados. What's next on the agenda here? What's next is, let's see. Where are my chicken? Oh, yeah. So, I'm floating around the New York Times today. Because it's Wednesday, that's what we do, right? And I pass a recipe that I can't help but stop and look at. And the recipe is chicken braised in 2 vinegars. So I stop and I read the recipe. I like it. I plan on making it because I like chicken. This particular one is using chicken thighs, which I love. If it's not my very favorite piece, my second favorite piece, because I love wings. But when you're cooking see, that's the thing. Wings are not a meal. Wings are an appetizer. Wings are happy hour. Wings are great before the meal. You know what? Hey, let's have some wings. How you like them? Buffalo, spicy, Chinese, soy, ginger, jerk. Love the wings. But if you're having a meal, you want something media, and that's where your chicken thighs come in. I buy them by the 1,000 over at the Costco, where you have the option of getting them bone in, skin on, or boneless, skinless. And while I am generally a fan of bone in, skin on, they take longer to cook, but they generally have more flavor because of both the bone and the skin. I have at times, and I'm perfectly good with your boneless and skinless chicken thighs, because when Costco sells them, they're organic. And they cook faster and they're yummy. And part of the reason they're yummy, even without the bone and the skin, is because, dark meat just has more flavor. I actually can't stand eating breast meat. The only time, like when they sell tenders, the only way you could make tenders good, for the most part, is to drench them in something. I deep fry them like chicken fingers, or just hit them up with a ton of lemon and garlic and capers and spices and seasoning. But I'm not interested. They're still puffy to me. I still have no interest in white meat chicken. The only time that I kind of will have it is when I roast an entire chicken, and it is so heavy on lemon and garlic that even the breast, which has to be cooked so that it's moist, but drenched in my garlicky, lemony kind of au jus. What are you calling an au jus? Even that's good. But I digress. And I digress because we're really here talking about chicken braised in 2 vinegars from today's New York Times. Let me just make a point about why vinegar matters. Because up till some years ago, the conventional wisdom was that your tongue, your taste buds, had receptors in it that are able to taste and discern for different tastes, right? There's sweet, there's salt, there's bitter, and there's sour. Right? Sour you get, for example, from lemon, classic, and vinegar, incidentally. That's why I'm going here. Bitter can be beer, it can be a dark chocolate, it can be coffee. Right? Salt we know, and sweet we know. And then it had been determined, and I may be going back 70 years, but certainly it wasn't more commonly accepted in this country, that there was a 5th taste called umami. U-M-A-M-I. Who's umami? And umami is the taste of richness and fullness that you would it's easier to describe the kind of food that you're eating, and you're going, oh yeah, okay, I get what umami is. Like when you have mushrooms, when you have a piece of steak, yeah, right, when you have like an anchovy, these are rich. Even red wine, even probably bourbon. Okay, what I'm saying is there's a fullness of flavor that goes beyond sweet, salt, bitter, and sour. It's called umami. But one of the things that you find in eating and in cooking is that the more flavor profiles, the more of the tongue that you can intrigue, the more interesting and full the flavor is, right? So good cooks always understand that when you're making, certain foods, one of the ways to kind of like perk it up, open it up. Sometimes you taste something and it's like, oh, it's good, but it needs something. Oftentimes, we don't cook with enough salt, so you're making a sauce or something like that. It needs something. Well, maybe it's salt, right? You go, oh, it needs something. Maybe if you're making a tomato sauce and you have it with pasta, it needs something. Maybe all it needs is the grated Parmesan cheese, by the way, a classic example of umami. Sometimes those sauces can be a tad heavy on the tongue, and the way to rectify that, the way to correct that, is by adding in an element of sourness, oftentimes from lemon, oftentimes from vinegar. And that's the point of the story here. I've had chicken that has been made with vinegar as a primary ingredient that is just blow away outstanding. Not always, doesn't have to be. You could fry chicken, you could roast chicken, you can make chicken 10,000 ways. But today's recipe in the New York Times is chicken braised in 2 vinegars. Braising as a method is my favorite because it means that you're cooking in a pool of liquid. Oftentimes you only need really to use 1 pot. Let's see what she does. Today's New York Times, chicken braised in 2 vinegars, 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Coaches salt and black pepper, 2 tablespoons olive oil, 6 cloves of garlic, peeled and smashed. Why? You guys know why you're peeling and smashing the garlic? Peeling, obviously, because you want to get right to the garlic. We don't want to cover it up. We want to expose it. And smashing it to expose the oils, the essence of the garlic. 1/2 cup best quality balsamic vinegar. 1/2 cup best quality red wine vinegar. Okay, so there's your 2. This is a combo of balsamic and red wine. And then optional, 1 tablespoon finely chopped Italian parsley. Optional, 2 teaspoons finely chopped oregano. And then optional for serving, flaky salt. Right? So basically, you're cooking chicken thighs in vinegar with garlic. Season chicken well on both sides with salt and pepper. In a large saute pan, heat olive oil over medium heat. Add garlic and cook until it starts to become fragrant and lightly golden. This will be 2 minutes. Don't cook it for longer than that. You don't want your garlic to cook longer for that because it will become bitter. But when you get a little bit of that golden brown, right, you know the garlic is in the right place. Remove it in this case, with a slotted spoon and set it aside. Begin cooking the chicken, making sure not to crowd the pan. You may need to do this in batches. Why are you not crowding the pan? Because when you crowd the pan, you're not really giving it an opportunity to cook. You bring down the temperature, it starts to steam. No. High heat. Do not crowd your pan. Essence of cooking the chicken is really cooking it. Don't crowd it. Excuse me? I made that go away. Sorry. However, if you do want to call in, 800-508-5431. I will answer your call. Cook until the chicken is no longer pink on the inside and begins to lightly brown in spots. This will be 3 to 4 minutes per side. All right? So, honestly, what does this take? I mean, who's not... It just... This is ready. This is amazing dinner ready in 30 minutes. If it's not cooked through at this point, that's okay, right? Because we're going to bring it back to the pan, right? If you've cooked the chicken in batches, add all of the meat and any residual juices back to the pan. Now you're going to pour in the vinegars. You're going to add your reserved garlic and you're going to bring it to a simmer. Turn the heat to a medium-low, cover, and allow the meat to continue to cook in the sauce. This is 5 to 7 minutes. Your chicken, which you had cooked to like 70 or 75%, is now in a pan, braising, cooking in liquid, not submerged, but in liquid, vinegar in this case, garlic, and you're cooking for another 5 to 7 minutes. At this point, uncover, toss the chicken well in the vinegar to coat it. Cook chicken about 3 to 5 minutes more or until the sauce has reduced by about a half. The only thing we're doing here is we're uncovering this, and that will allow for some evaporation, which in turn allows for the sauce to reduce and thicken. Some people at this point, to thicken a sauce, will add things to it, not me. I like the natural reduction that you get with the heat. Right? The longer you heat it, the longer it's over the heat, the higher the heat, the more that sauce reduces, the more it intensifies, the more it thickens. Cook the chicken 3 to 5 minutes till the sauce is reduced by about half and thickened slightly. Season with parsley and oregano if using, and then some flaky salt if using. Serve in bowls over polenta or with rice pilaf and spoon the remaining sauce atop. I don't know about you. Sounds good to me. Place in New Jersey called the Belmont Tavern. Been there a long time. Classic. And the most famous dish they serve over at the Belmont Tavern is called chicken Savoy. Fortunate enough to have. It's so famous, in fact, that you can go on to Epicurious. You can find a recipe. It's called Stretch's Chicken Savoy, because Stretch is the guy there over at the Belmont Tavern. It's his recipe. You could go over to Savour Online, one of the kind of famous old online publications, and here from October of 2008, Stretch's Chicken Savoy. Walk into the Belmont Tavern and the intoxicating smell of this dish, roasted chicken laced with garlic, herbs, and red wine vinegar, hits you immediately. We tried to get the recipe from several staffers, but gave up after chef owner Annette Robluski said, "If I tell you, then we'd have to kill you on your way out the door. We think our version is pretty close." Walk into the Belmont Tavern. So, let us take a peek at this here. 1 3 to 4 pound chicken cut into 8 pieces, 4 cloves of garlic, 1/3 cup. You ready for this, kids? Finely grated pecorino. All right, we got some cheese in this baby. So there's garlic and cheese, 4 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of dried oregano, 1 tablespoon of dried thyme, 1 cup red wine vinegar, kosher, and freshly ground pepper. Here's how one would make. God, I can't wait to eat this again. I have to make it myself. But here's how you would make chicken Savoy. Chicken, garlic, right, heat the oven to 500. That's high. I love that. That's already sounding good to me. So your oven is super high. Season the chicken with salt and pepper and set aside. In a small food processor, or you could do it in a, what do you call those things? Mortar and pestle. Finally chop together your garlic and your pecorino, some of the 3 tablespoons of the olive oil, oregano, and thyme. So you're making an herb paste. Set the herb paste aside. Heat the remaining tablespoon of oil in a 12-inch cast iron skillet over medium-high heat. Add the chicken inside down and cook until golden brown, 6 to 8 minutes of your life. Meanwhile, the whole place is just smelling glorious. Because chicken in oil, cast iron, it's a beautiful smell. Turn the chicken pieces over with tongs. Using a spoon, smear the chicken skin with the herb paste. Transfer the skillet to the oven and cook until well brown and cook through. That's 20 to 25 minutes. Not bad. Remove the skillet from the oven, pour out the fat, add in the vinegar. Pour the vinegar sauce over the chicken, transfer chicken to a plate, pour vinegar sauce over it. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be having Stretch's Chicken Savoy. If you go to the Epicurious recipe, let's just see if it's the same. Chicken, salt, 4 garlic, 1 tablespoon of oregano, a tablespoon of dried thyme, a third of a cup of grated Romano, grated, well, again, pecorino Romano, 3 tablespoons of oil, and a cup of red wine vinegar. Idea is the same. Sear off your pieces with salt and pepper. Grind up your garlic, oil, cheese, thyme, oregano, spread it over the thing, roast the heck out of it in a hot oven, take it off, pour out the fat, add in the vinegar, spoon the sauce over the chicken, and invite me over for dinner of that dish. While we're on the subject of vinegar, by the way, because again, it's one of those things that it's like, I don't know, people take it for granted or whatever. Everybody knows there's like a lot of different kind of oils. Corn oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, olive oil, and sesame oil when you're making that kind of food, and sunflower, safflower. I mean, we know there's a lot of different oils out there. Oh, I like the nut oil, macadamia, walnut oil. It's great in a salad dressing. But it's important also to remember that there's a lot of vinegar out there too, different types of vinegar. And it makes a huge difference. I'm telling you how important the element of sour is. Not that you want to be too sour, but you want to excite the palate. Sometimes that's the thing. And the nature of these chicken dishes that I'm describing here is that they're exciting because you're cooking it with the vinegar. Distilled white. So here are all different. Here's a bunch of different types of vinegar. Distilled white vinegar, right? I mean, generally, if you only have like one vinegar in your kitchen, it's that. You could use it for a lot of stuff. I actually use it to clean my coffee pot, my wood cutting board. I don't know. Throw some in the dishwasher periodically. It makes everything smell kind of like clean. Vinegar is distilled white vinegar. Nothing wrong with that. But it's a little intense. And you got your white wine vinegar. White wine vinegar is good. Then you have your rice vinegar, made from fermented rice. Very common in China, Japan, and it's nice because it's like less acidic than the other ones, maybe slightly sweeter or what you would call not as harsh. So, good in a salad dressing, and certainly good in any kind of marinade that you're using. Like if I make a dipping sauce for dumplings, I'm going to use soy sauce, I'm going to use sesame oil, I'm going to use some rice vinegar. Champagne vinegar. Very elegant, made from champagne. Lighter, more mellow than other vinegars. Maybe not used in cooking, but great in salad dressings. Apple cider vinegar. Say it's healthy enough to just chug. Also good to cook with. Red wine vinegar. I actually like red wine vinegar in my salad dressings. I'm not a huge balsamic guy. I mean, I'll use it, but I don't love it. I like red wine vinegar in my salad dressings. Sherry vinegar, made from sherry. It's fortified Spanish wine, aged in oak barrels for 6 months before it's bottled. it has a little more flavor than your red wine vinegar. But I gotta be honest with you, I went to cooking school, and we didn't use anything more than we used sherry wine vinegar when we made vinaigrette. You make a vinaigrette, a mustard vinegar, a classic French vinaigrette is going to be 1 part. In this case, we use sherry wine vinegar, 3 parts of basically oil, olive oil, let's say. It was a teaspoon or so of a Dijon mustard, salt and pepper, and maybe we used shallots, is what gave it all that extra flavor. Malt vinegar, which is the thing. If you go over to England and you have fish and chips, I mean, you're dipping basically your chips in malt vinegar. And then, I don't know, I don't think balsamic is the king of vinegars, but anyway, it's produced in Italy, Modena. The thing that's interesting about it is what you buy in the store is pretty, mass-produced commercial balsamic. Nothing wrong with it, but that's the kind of stuff that they'll put in a bottle and age for 10, 20, 30 years. You could pay $100, $150 for an aged balsamic vinegar. One of the things I would do with balsamic, incidentally, is you can reduce it down. You take a cup of it, and you put it in a saucepan, and you heat it up, and you just keep heating it until that 1 cup becomes basically a quarter of a cup, and then it gets all like thick and more intense, and you could throw in a little bit of thyme into that too if you want to give it more flavor, or whatever your favorite kind of herb is, whatever. But yeah, when you cook it down, you essentially can turn it into a glaze. And what's nice about that is you can make a pretty plate. You could use it as a glaze over, some chicken or some other protein or whatever, balsamic. And then you have there's also Chinese black vinegar, which is interesting too. Sometimes if you go to a real kind of legit Chinese restaurant and they're moving around those things with kind of like the dumplings and the dim sum, they'll come to the table and one of the dipping options you have is black vinegar. Real good. So a lot of vinegar on the menu. In Savoy, chicken with vinegar. If you want that recipe that I mentioned, get in touch with me at Short Order Dad. Anywhere. Seriously, if you want to find me, I'm easy. Short Order Dad. Whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or even shortorderdad@gmail.com. Got any questions? I have the answers. Insofar as they're related to food and cooking and eating. Finally tonight, let's get off the recipes and move to another subject which I mentioned, which is today's New York Times. When we eat or don't eat may be critical for health. Long story short, my friends, a growing body of research suggests that our bodies function optimally when we align our eating patterns with our circadian rhythms. Nutrition scientists have long debated the best diet for optimal health, but now some experts believe that it's not just what we eat that's critical for good health, but when we eat it. A growing body of research suggests that our bodies function optimally when we align our eating patterns with our circadian rhythms, the innate 24-hour cycles that tell our bodies when to wake up, when to eat, when to fall asleep. Study shows that chronically disrupting this rhythm by eating late meals or nibbling on midnight snacks, for example, could be a recipe for weight gain and metabolic trouble. I see. Most of the evidence in humans suggests that consuming the bulk of your food earlier in the day is better for your health. We kind of knew that, or had been told that. Now there's research evidence to kind of verify and prove that out. Dr. Peterson, mentioned in the article, conducted a tightly controlled experiment with a small group of pre-diabetic men. In one phase of the study, the subjects ate their meals in a 12-hour daily window for 5 weeks. In the other phase, they were fed the same meals in a 6-hour window beginning each morning. The researchers had the subjects eat enough food to maintain their weight so they could assess whether the time-restricted regimen had any health benefits unrelated to weight loss. It did. It was a large effect. Conclusion. While studies suggest that eating earlier in the day is optimal for metabolic health, it does not necessarily mean that you should skip dinner. It might, however, make sense to make your dinners relatively light. One group of researchers in Israel found in studies that overweight adults lost more weight and had greater improvements in blood sugar, insulin, and cardiovascular risk factors when they ate a large breakfast, modest lunch, and small dinner compared to the opposite, which is to say a small breakfast and a large dinner. Dr. Peterson said it confirms an age-old adage. Eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's program is brought to you by a product called Zoop. Z-O-U-P, super premium chicken broth that delivers homemade taste. Zoop. The world didn't need another chicken broth. However, what it needed was one that tasted better. I've tasted the Zoop chicken broth. It's excellent. So if you're looking for something really good, the kind of chicken broth that you are going to use as a primary ingredient in a dish, or just because you want to add vegetables and chicken to it and say, hey, have some chicken soup, you're going to go with Zoop Super Premium Chicken Broth. Prepared in kettles using restaurant quality cooking methods and standards, this traditional super premium broth is made in small batches, which is big these days. Small batches are big. Using the freshest and finest ingredients, bursting with comforting chicken flavor that tastes homemade. Zoop chicken broth is the perfect base for hearty chicken soups and can be used in casseroles, rice or grain dishes, and other recipes that call for chicken broth. It's also, by the way, low in calories, paleo-friendly, zero carbs, and completely free of hormones, gluten, GMOs, fat, trans fat, and saturated fat. So no joke. You want to get yourself some good chicken broth. This is the stuff. Zoop, Z-O-U-P, www.zoopbroth.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our time. A pleasure always to spend time with you. This is episode 21 of All You Can Eat. I'm your host, Rob Rosenthal, reminding you that life is short. So never waste a meal. And I will see you back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on